centre sandblasted, ready to weld up, and they're all round so that they're nice and straight and true and lovely. Next step is creating the flat top and bottom. So I've got a piece of 150mm or 6-inch wide 6mm steel or quarter inch thick. So the plan is basically to cut the two pieces come out of this one piece of steel. So the top and bottom come out of this one piece of steel. So I need to make a measurement 100mm wide at one end or 4 inches wide at one end, and then taper it down to 50mm 2 inches at the other end. Cut that line, and then basically I end up with two sort of top and bottom staggered on this one piece of steel. So I'm going to mark this out, get it cut, and yeah, we can start welding the arms together. Alright, so I apologise for the noise. They are sandblasting right next to me, so it's pretty loud. But we're going to get into marking out these top and bottoms now, so yeah, let's get stuck into it. Pretty good. Righto, so I've got my halves that we cut earlier and sandblasted a wee bit earlier. I'm going to now assemble them, so I'm going to basically copy what I did yesterday. So I've got one half, I just need to figure out exactly which half I did first. I did the top first, because that allowed me to cut the three aerial things. So I'll build basically the top. We're going to be welding one of these to each side, like so, and then yeah, we'll get into cutting out the aerial, the three holes for the aerial. So we'll just figure out exactly which one of these I need to use, and then we'll get stuck into welding these up. Yesterday I double continuous welded one side, and then I didn't double continuous the other side. I don't think I actually need to be really honest. I think it's probably overkill. So I'm just going to weld on one side on this one. I think that'll be more than enough for what it is. It's just got a whole bloody aerials, and I'm sort of building it so that it can take an impact from a Cessna. Yeah, I'll slightly under-engineer this one just because it doesn't need to be as full-on as the other side, but I think we'll be okay either way because I learned enough lessons off the one yesterday to be able to do it well enough, I think. So we'll get into it. They're not going anywhere. So in order to get the second wing on exactly the way we need it, I've got my little bevel. I've measured it off wing number 1 on the ground over there, and then I've applied it, see if I can show you. So I've applied it to this angle here. You can sort of see that's the line. Well, there's two lines there. The first one was a bit of a mistake. I need to go in a bit further. So the first one is actually a line that I put on just to make sure that I know what angle I need to cut. And then when I got my template, I realised that it wasn't going to be cutting enough out, and I'd have a big gap at the front. So I got my template, moved it in just a fraction, and now I've got a line marked all the way around this here that I can now cut appropriately with the grinder. So I'm going to go through and trim that off now, and then we're ready to start fitting and measuring, tacking, and then sort of yeah, just going through and fine-tuning and make sure that the two wings are identical to each other. So we'll get into that bit now. Alright, so that's all sitting there. It's not tacked together yet, it's just sitting there, but what we've done, I'll show you how I've figured it out. So I've got my bevel, and it's a wee bit hard to show on screen, I'll try, but I've basically lined that up with the weld, so you can see that's pretty much along that weld there. And then because there's a weld on this side, I can't stick it up like that, I have to go off the weld. But when you sort of line those two up, they're pretty close to themselves. I've also got my level, and sitting there, where is it? Sitting there like that, that's pretty close to spot on. That one there, I've also knocked all the slag off just to make sure it's not affecting it. That one there is pretty close to spot on. Because of this big weld, I can't show you with my little square, but it's sitting square there, and this side here, it is a little wee square. This side here, there we go. So that there's sitting pretty much spot on there as well. So what I'm going to do, the fit up is pretty good, so I'm happy enough with the fit up. You can sort of see it's like maybe a 1 or a 1.5, 2 mil gap sort of roughly around the whole place. So what I'm going to do now is mark that out as clear as I can. I'm going to take this, actually I'll probably just move this one back, bring my plasma cutter in here and blow that out with a plasma cutter, because then I don't have to change any of my jig. You can see it's all a bit precarious. I've got blocks of wood and so on and clamp bits of wood holding it all together, but it'll allow me to plasma out that inside of that main tower. So let's get the plasma in and start that part. That'll actually hold the whole thing together. I'll move it so we can get to everywhere and weld it properly. On the inside of our pipe work, I wanted to make sure everything was painted. So you can see I've got some grey paint basically in there now. The way that I did this, I was thinking I'd probably be able to roll it or paint it or brush it or anything like that. All of that proved to be next to impossible. So what I did was physically pour in paint in the end here, stick the mast up on an angle like this so it would run down, and then I made this contraption to blow the paint around. I'll show you this gadget. So my yellow airline comes up to an old tyre gauge just so that I can just duct taped it on, and it's just a piece of pipe with a little LED torch just strapped to it. And what that allowed is that I can pretty much blow air all the way down these arms, and it just spun the paint all the way around it. So it's not going to be the best paint job in the world, but normally these don't get painted, so it's going to be better than the normal process, I suppose. And then yeah, when I cap it all off, there's going to be very little bare steel in there to rust. Alright, so it's time to start getting the stainless mount done for the radar. So I've got some spare stainless over the back here, so I'll show you what the plan is and we'll get into cutting it. So this piece of old, sort of a box that you can sort of see holding up all of our just random bits of scrap and stainless. This is a piece of 6mm stainless with a 16mm solid round bar welded onto the bottom of it. So I'm actually going to use the side of this. I'm going to cut the shape that I want. This is going to become the bottom and this will be the top. The radar mount will be welded onto this, so this piece is upside down, if you will. So yeah, I'll cut the side of this off and get the shape that we want. And then yeah, we'll get into building the actual mount that the radar sits on. So let's get into plasmaing. Righto, so the radar that I'm allowing for has a radius of 900mm from the centre to centre. So it's, what's that, 1.8 metres from one side to the other. So it's a 6 foot wide array is the size that I'm allowing for. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to go that big, but chances are we will. So that gives us a 72 nautical mile radar. We're actually having two radars on Brewbegs. So we're having the two radars that we're having is one's going to be an open array 72 nautical mile radar, which is quite a big radar. It's bigger than what most recreational boats have. It's definitely something from the commercial world, but it is kind of probably about, I don't know, 30 or 40% of trawlers this size have one that big. And we're also having a circular closed array 36 nautical mile radar as well. The reason we're having two is obviously backup. If one fails, we've got the other. But in the ice, when it's absolutely blowing its ass off, open array radars are not as good as a closed array radar, because a closed array, because they're in that encapsulated dome, they can keep rotating and they don't freeze up so much, whereas the open array ice can start to actually really become a problem with them. So in really horrid conditions, you often, the icebreakers and things will often turn off their big, 6 foot wide arrays, and they'll just be relying on the small circular radars. So that's why we've got that those two levels of redundancy that we're building in. So this one here is the 72 nautical mile radar. So I need to stick it out quite a bit from the mast so that we've got plenty of room for that 6 foot diameter. So the plan, this is basically going to form a gusset. So how wide are we? So 230 mil. So I'm going to come up to about 100 mil. Oh, turns out that's still quite hot. This doesn't really have to be an exact science, just has to be tidy. So long as the gusset is big enough to basically, more than support the weight of the radar and any sort of anticipated loads that we expect. So the gusset is going to be doing the vertical loads, and then the shape of the base that the radar actually sits on is going to be doing the side-to-side loads. All of this is built out of 6mm or 1/4 inch steel. I did think about going more, like thicker for the gusset and so on, but I looked around a lot of the other trawlers that have been, have these sort of size radars and these size radar mounts, and most of them are like 6mm. So this is 6mm with a 16mm bar on the bottom, so it's going to be more than enough for what we need to do. So yeah, let's get into making this. So that's roughly how our gusset's going to sit, and with the mast obviously at this end, mast at this end on an angle, and then I'll taper this end off so it looks appropriate and so on to the angles on the mast. I've got some more 16mm rod down the back in the pile, so I'll trim the front end off and I'll weld the 16mm rod in there just so that we get that nice uniform look. But now I'm going to start working on the flat plate that the radar mounts to, and then get all of this tacked together. Then I'll sandblast everything and then weld it. Alright, so I don't have a piece of stainless that's long enough to do the whole base that the radar is going to sit on, but I don't need stainless to go all the way, so I'll show you what my compromise is and I'll show you how I'm going to build it. So I've got two pieces of steel here. So this piece here is a bit that I cut out of the wheel at the back of the wheelhouse. It used to be a window, well it's a window now, it used to be a piece of straight steel, but this is stainless, and this here is a mount that I cut out of the engine bay about 2 years ago. And that's a piece of 6mm mild. So they're both 6mm, but that's mild steel and that's stainless. So what my plan is I'm going to join these together. I'll tack weld those together for now, and I'll strip all of the paint and everything away and sandblast them right back. But I'm actually going to start the mast will be welded at this end, and then I'll start the shape, and up this end you'll end up with essentially a flat stainless plate and mount and everything that we can drill whatever holes that we need to suit the radar. When we actually get the radar, we'll know what size to drill. So basically I'm going to mark out the shape on this. I'll plasma cut the shape just because it's a hell of a lot faster than doing it with the grinder, and then I'll just clean the edges up with a flap wheel and we'll go from there. They're all marked out, that's our shape, so we'll get started and get into cutting this.
Let's not forget I still got my friends.
So we've trimmed off the top and it's roughly level. It's not perfect, but it doesn't matter, because the reason I say that is because we're going to be putting a cap on top of this, but instead of just welding a cap straight to the top, I want to be able to access the inside of this like forever basically. So what my plan is, because there's a couple of reasons for that, so if I ever change wiring or want to do something different later on, add something, take something away, whatever, I want to be able to essentially get inside here and make sure that there's no issues with wiring. I can feed a wire down, or I can pull one through, or like whatever it happens to be. Like I can reach from the top, I can reach these arms, so I can push a wire up from the bottom. If I'm putting a new one in for argument's sake, I can push a wire up from the bottom, I can grab it, pull it out, and then feed it back through and out to the arms, and then I can pull it out whatever hole we need to pull it out of. If I cap this off, like welded this off fully, then that becomes really difficult to do later on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this bolt on, bolt off. To do that, I want to have as much access inside here as possible, so I'm going to do a small flange all the way around here that'll have, I'll drill holes and thread them, so this top part will be bolt on, and then I'll probably just sicker it down, or sealant, put a bead of sealant all the way around and then bolt it down in there to cap it off. On top of here we're going to have our radar dome and everything anyway, so if I make this bolt on, bolt off, it means that I can always change the footprint later on. So if I need to put a bigger pad or smaller pad, whatever I need to do, it's really easy just to do that. I can just go and make the pad, put the bolt pattern in that I need, and then just unbolt this one that's on here and put the new one on. So it gives me heaps of flexibility for the future. So that's the plan at the moment. I'm just going to use my template. This is the clear template that we used to figure out what shape to, we use this on heaps of stuff. We figured out what shape to notch the arms on the radar mount at the front. I figured out what shape to do the front using this. So I'm going to use this again. This will be probably, I think this is the last thing that I need to use this for. But what I'm going to do is basically mark out exactly where I need a cut, and then I'll do probably 20 mil all the way around, and that'll become my flange. And I'll probably do that out of something reasonably thick, like maybe, I was thinking 6 mil, but I'd probably go thicker, maybe 8 mil, something like that, just so that I've got heaps of, when I put the threads in, just so I've got plenty of meat there for the threads to actually bite into. I'm just going to do mild steel, mainly because I absolutely hate drilling and tapping stainless. I don't have the best drills in the world, and they always struggle with it, so it would be lovely to have stainless. That would be my preference, but mild steel is going to be perfectly fine for this application. So so that's what we're going to do. Yeah, so that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do. Righto, so this isn't cut straight, this is flat and straight. So I've leveled this up now, so I'm going to weld this in, and then I'm going to basically grind to suit the surface of this here. I've sandblasted both sides, and I've welded the stainless nuts onto the bottom, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bolts that are going to hold this lid down, and they're all M8, so they're nice and strong. So I'll just run a bead all the way around now and seal this up. Some of these welds are exceptional. I don't say so myself. I think it's a massive fluke sometimes. So this is our finished flange. So you can see it's pretty straightforward. Those holes are basically tapped. Well, they've got obviously a nut weld on the bottom, but it works essentially as if they're tapped. Yeah, so we're going to just put a flat cap on top of this. Because this gives us options in terms of, you know, if we want to modify it later on, we can change whatever we have mounted up here. We can put a FLIR camera when we're doing ice, or if we're, you know, in areas where we want to have a satellite dome, or like whatever gear that we need to do. Having the flange gives us heaps of options, and it means we're not locked into any one short.
I heard you want to leave this place where we grew up. This old town, just put it all behind. Remember you and I would always find somewhere to hide when we were kids, so we could see and hear the water run. The river's gonna cry when you're gone.